Right, I'm going to start. I think we are still waiting for a couple of people, but we'll start, otherwise we're just filling time on. So, apologies for absence, please, Carol.
Apologies from Dominic Elton, Arthur Nicholson, Ethan Stacy and Susan Warren.
Thank you. Declarations of interest, I will start this off. So I have a personal interest in item 6 because a family member works for Devon Audit Partnership, which isn't called that anymore, but I can't remember what it is called. Assurance, that's it.
I think we've all got a personal interest in the members' allowance scheme. But
Oh yeah.
other than that, no, nothing.
Minutes.
That's a minute, George, yeah.
Okay,
Wrong
well,
one. Sorry, that's just my
I had a bit of a panic there, got the wrong agenda.
wrong agenda. Now I'm on October the 1st. Look, when it finally lets me in. So no, I don't think so.
I don't think so. Bill?
No interest.
No? No? Marcus?
No.
No.
None of something three tables.
I'm not going to make any comments. Laura is expected, and so is Theo, yes. So you'll have some friends soon, John. Chairperson's announcements. Just for the rules laid out, I'm identified as chairman. I have none. Minutes of last meeting. So we'll go through them. Oh, we'll need an approver and seconder to start with, please. Thank you. Both Jeremys have proposed and seconded. We'll go through page by page. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7. Oh, it was the long one, wasn't it? Okay. And then we've got the pink pages, that's page 1 and page 2. Are you all happy with those? Okay. Public speaking, we have no public speaking. We have any comments? No. And then we go to item 6, which is our internal and external audit arrangements. I'd like to welcome Ken. And of course, we've got great
Oscar
and Oscar
Grant
will
Thornton.
be joining us. Oh, he's there. I can't see him. Oscar will be joining us later on, but Ben is going to introduce the item.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. So item 6 is in terms of our governance arrangements from both internal and external audit. So we've got Ken Johnson on site here today from Devon Assurance Partnership. So I'm going to introduce Ken first of all. When Ken's completed his item, we've got Oscar from Grant Thornton. I'll bring Oscar up on screen and Oscar will deliver Part B of the paper to you, the external audit progress report and sector update. So, Ken, welcome to Exmoor.
Just check that it's on. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you for that, Ben. Really good to see you all. Sorry I couldn't make it last year, but it's good to see you. Good to be up here this morning. Interesting drive up from all the way from Plymouth. A lot longer than I thought it might, but it's the big lorries on the small roads that sort of bothers me a little bit, but there you go. So before you is the sort of annual report for what is now Devon Assurance Partnerships, view of the audits they've done in your area. They are good news. So for those of you who've read them, they are very good news compared to a lot of organisations. I'll just take you through. There is a requirement, obviously, to do this sort of thing for return to your external auditors as well, which someone's here today or maybe online. Yeah. So it basically gives you a good, and we've changed our name from audit to assurance because if it makes sense to people, audit is one thing. We've got counter-fraud capability, we've got risk management capability involved in the services that we provide now. Some of you may have met my colleague Brad. No? Yes? Possibly? Okay. So he's a risk specialist. My background is in counter-fraud work. So we do all get involved in that assurance sort of business, if you like, trying to make sure that we look at the business as a whole and holistically. So just to run quickly through the audits that we did for you last year. your key financial systems are very sound. They've been embedded for a long time, which is really, really good. I know that you're looking at a new financial system and introducing that. So what I would say to members is that next year that may have a few wrinkles in it. And that's not to be feared, that's to be welcomed. In as much as if you're bringing on a new finance system and we look at it and we do find the wrinkles, that's the whole point of having that sort of audit. Okay, so whilst it's very healthy and very substantial assurance at the moment, I would say don't overthink it if it's a little more reasonable rather than substantial next year, because the new financial system will have some wrinkles in it. Okay, but yeah, the overall standard is excellent. It's not something we get to say for every organisation that we do internal audits for, so that's a great reflection on the staff and the people that you have working here. Cyber and IT, it's a big worry for everybody, and it's increasing. I would be really remiss if we allowed you anything more than reasonable, no matter how good you are. Does that make sense to everybody? You can be as good as you like, and we don't know what's coming around the corner. We don't know what the new threats are, and you have to sort of maintain that level of, you're doing very well, but you need to keep that in your eye line. That will. I'd be very pushed to give anybody substantial, and we work quite closely with the National Cyber Security Centre, so it's really important that you do keep that in your mind and in your eye line. But it is good. Reasonable assurance is good. And what I've said to others is, on reasonable assurance, if I came here with A pluses for substantial assurance and an A for reasonable assurance, you'd probably all be happy with that. But however, everybody's striving for substantial assurance all the time, and I can understand that, and it makes sense, and it's a good thing to do. But I wouldn't be disappointed with the A pluses and the A's that you've got. Okay, it's a really good report. Okay. So it's really positive, and the rest of the report is really about what we do for the rest of this year. And myself and Ben will obviously negotiate when and how we undertake the audits, the key financial systems audit for you. Ben and I are thinking about what's the best timing with the new system coming in to get that sort of embedded so we can really test that. And maybe looking at other areas going forward. So there is some contingency built into the plan, and that means if something does arise that we can adjust the plan if we need to. Happy to take questions if anybody's got any.
Members, any questions? Andy?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. Was it Tony?
Ken.
Sorry, Ken. Thanks
Tony's the boss.
Yeah, Tony's the boss, right, okay. No, I wasn't paying attention when you were introduced by the chairman. So, yeah, great to get the assurance we've given. You mentioned cyber assurance,
yeah.
and I'm just wondering why item 2 under that, you've got no formal framework with which cyber risks can be effectively managed. That surprised me.
Sorry.
Yeah, I just wondered, because clearly there are frameworks out there, aren't there?
There are, but it's about recognising that and formally putting that on a risk register and understanding what that looks like, and then amending and doing what you need to do. It is useful. Most of us understand what we need to do for cyber security, and that, you know, if I have to put it in a phrase that my son uses quite regularly, the problem tends to be between the keyboard and the chair. And that's the
yes.
That's
yeah.
the weak spot is right there.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So for most people, it's about training and awareness. But yeah, actually getting that embedded is another matter into your organisational risk register, and that's
it is fact not applicable by it.
It's only the fact that we didn't go there. We probably didn't have time, and it was one of those things. Yes, it is a risk, but looking at your other stuff that you've got in place, it's reasonable, and you can, yeah. So in an ideal world, with all the time and resources that you could possibly have, it'd be really good to have that really detailed risk analysis. But in a relatively small organisation, you've got relatively small
risk.
yeah, and I can understand the approach, but yeah, in an ideal world, we might want to look at it next year.
Okay, thanks.
Any further questions? Mandy?
Just a challenge, is your organisation fully protected? Do you feel you've got sufficient in place if you say no one can really have it?
As much as anybody can. As I say, what I would say is we do, because we operate most of our systems through Devon County Council. So they are overseen, if you like, and monitored by, I don't know if it means anything to anybody, SCOMIS, the organisation that sort of deals with the IT for Devon County. So even them, I would say, it's reasonable. When you look at the organisations across the globe and the resources and money that is involved, if Sony can get hit, yeah, if Pepsi can get hit, and you know, huge multi-billion-pound organisations with huge defences. The CIA got hacked, for goodness sake, and you know, it's anyone who says they're actually clean as a whistle and they're never going to get hit is probably the first people to get hit. So
It's only secure until it's proved otherwise.
absolutely, absolutely. Until somebody finds a way around what you've just invented, yeah. Absolutely.
Well, that's two good phrases for this morning. Marcus?
Thank you, Chair. No, it's a question because you said this is good news. And actually, yeah, there's an awful lot of green there. Is there anything we need to worry about? Because obviously you do other organisations as well.
Yeah.
And then they have a good report, and then does complacency sit in and the next one's really bad? Or do you think how do you think we're fair?
It's always a potential risk, isn't it? But I would say not in your particular area, because you're looking at a new financial system, and Ben and I have talked about this. It's while things are great and your key financial systems are working well, they're working well now. You probably need to look at a new financial system to make it even better, make it more secure going forward, and have more functionality within it. And software and bits and pieces that you use are up to date when you buy. Well, most of the time they're up to date when you buy them. Within 5 years now, IT systems are pretty much you're running patches and all the rest of it for them. So I don't think there's a complacency, but there is, of course, there's always a risk. But that's why we come back and work with you every year to make sure you're not getting complacent. And I think with the relationship that I've got with Ben, it wouldn't be an issue if I said, look, this is something that I feel is a huge problem. There are risks, there are always risks, but you're dealing with them, you're approaching them professionally, so that's the main thing for us. We can't see into the future, but yeah, it's good.
The other thing I would, sorry, thank you, Chair. Oh, sorry.
No, it's only just a question around there.
Mm-hmm.
Probably in my mind, one of the biggest single factors that we're faced with at the moment is the risk management.
Yeah.
And there seems to be quite a difference between risk management in year,
Yeah.
where you have a budget in front of you and you're managing your systems and functions,
Yeah.
and risk management looking forwards as to how we deal with future funding,
Mm-hmm.
the risks of investment, the risk. We've got an item agenda later on in here,
Yeah.
which effectively could be quite a potential risk.
Mm-hmm.
We've got our own properties, which we're looking at how we work with a potential risk. And it's just interested how we managed to build that in to the functional side of the audit to ensure that we get it right going forward.
It is difficult, and as I say, you have a finite resource and a finite amount of money to spend on this sort of thing, and I understand that. In a perfect world, yes, I would be looking at you from a kind of fraud perspective. I think Brad's doing work up here with your risk management side anyway, but it's something that Ben and I have discussed about potentially using that kind of fraud expertise a bit more widely as well going forward. How quickly we can fit that in is another matter. I don't think you're at a huge risk compared to some of the transactions that I deal with for other authorities. But yeah, there is always a risk, and how you manage that on the ground floor is having that risk register, but that raising that awareness within your own people. That's your biggest defence, is that awareness tool. Okay, so what I would say is we'll work on it, we'll work together, but yeah, there is no easy fix. It's just It's just a grind out the problem, see where they are, see where the risks are. And we always talk about black swans, you know, and they're the things that you don't know. They're the things that you can't know at the moment. So there are risks that you know about that you can do something about. There are risks that you know about that you can't do anything about. And then there are those risks you have no idea they're even there. You can't do anything about them because you don't know, right? But they are there, and you try to look, but you don't always see them. Okay?
We'll have Ben and then Auntie.
Thank you, Chair. Just coming back into that on risk management, I mean, members will be aware from our reporting last November, and also the value for money work that the Grant Thornton auditor carried out last year. We've kind of highlighted risk management as one of our kind of key areas to attack this year. We have been working with Brad from Devon Assurance Partnership in terms of embedding risk management into our corporate objective setting and our corporate reporting and monitoring. And that's had a real overhaul, so it's not just one or two key staff that have been pushed into this, it's essentially all our key delivery team and leadership teams as well. So yes, the new finance system will be a key risk to us, but also embedding that risk management process and overhauling that into our systems is another key element that will need review, and we brought to yourselves as members in December this year.
Thank you, that's helpful. Andrew?
Actually, just picking up on Robin's point, I was thinking, what risk are you referring to, Robin? But it's only dawned on me, when investment programs are selected, a bad one could be selected and there could be massive financial risk. I guess that's going to be outside of your remit, but is it within yours, Ben? So that when we select, like that proposed select partnership of Aviva, we've got to make sure we go through a proper selection process as we are, spot the risks, because that's what could catch us out. The audit's going to be too late, isn't it? So I suppose we need to make sure, how do we know we've got the right selection process? I mean, I've done it before, so I can sort of see, but that's, who's going to reassure that we are doing that? That's your remit.
That's my role, yes.
Okay, yeah, so make sure we've got the right cash flow, there's no contractual risks. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So I've just seen that this is where that risk is going to be managed. Yeah.
This is useful. This is useful for a bit of learning, I think, for all of us.
Okay, oh good, all right, so, yeah.
Mandy?
Thank you. We're getting in the realms of unknown unknowns or known unknowns, aren't we? That's where we're at. So just a question for me as members. So will we have full sight of the risk register? Because it's not only the risk register, it's those mitigations that you're putting in place, whether they're the right mitigations and whether they're working. So will we have sort of sight of the risks for the authority to just have that oversight and see if there is anything perhaps missing or we need to add to it, or perhaps the mitigations aren't strong enough?
Yes. No, you answered that one. In terms of key strategic risks, yes. But I mean, if we want to delve further, then members are welcome to come and see me, and I can show the whole system in spec.
Perhaps I will.
Thank you.
Thank you. I can't see any more hands raised, so thank you, Ken. And then, do you want to go straight to Oscar?
I'll just introduce Oscar into this. Oscar, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're a little bit quiet on this end.
Okay.
Yes, fully up on this system. Are you able to increase your mic level at all?
Let's see if I can.
Sorry, talking to Oscar there, not members. Apologies.
I think this is at its maximum at the moment.
Okay.
Then.
Yeah. Can you?
Yeah.
Yes.
I
Can
can.
you?
I can speak up if you want.
Yeah,
to,
please.
That's fine.
That would be really useful. So please can I introduce Oscar Edwards. Oscar's our audit manager for Grant Thornton, undertaking the regularity audit with us currently. Oscar, welcome.
Yeah. Thanks, Ben. So I know Ben's introduced me a little bit there, but I will introduce myself a little bit more, because I've realised this is the first audit committee I've been to for Exmoor. So I'm the audit manager for 23-24, so I've taken over from Liam Royal, who was the audit manager in the prior year. My responsibility as the manager is essentially to ensure that the day-to-day running of the audit goes as smoothly as possible. So I work closely with Ben and the finance team, our engagement team that's working on the audit. I'm the main point of contact for management. I'll basically review all the work that's done as well, and make sure it meets quality standards. So just turning to our report then, if you go to page 24 of your pack that you have, you'll find the sector update report that we're presenting today. First of all, if you turn to page 4 of the report, which is page 27 in your pack, I'll just give you a brief update on the progress of the audit. So the audit's been ongoing since July at this stage. I would say it's been progressing well, despite we have had a few challenges along the way, which I'll go into more detail on. We're currently on track to complete the audit in the month of October, so this month, and then present the final reports at the November committee. I personally think this is quite a good outcome, and it's significantly sooner than what it was in the previous year, where I think the final reports were given to you in either February or March 2024. There's been no significant findings to date. We've completed our work on management override, which is one of our significant risks. There's no real issues coming out of that. We've also majorly completed most of our work on pensions, and again, there's no issues coming out of that. The main area that's outstanding at the moment is property, plant and equipment valuations, which we've got some queries with the valuer and also with the finance team, which we just need to get to the bottom of, and then we'll be able to conclude that work as well. I just want to go into a little bit more detail on some of the challenges we faced this year. So obviously, where we would have liked to have been in a perfect world is we would have liked to have today been in a position to have the audit report signed for you and the final audit findings report. However, we have had some unforeseen resourcing circumstances on our team. I won't go into too much detail on that, but the reason that's happened is because of some significant health issues in the wider team, which has meant that some of our audit resources had to be moved around a little bit. So unfortunately, there was nothing I could personally do about that to make that any better. The other couple of issues that we've had, so first of all, in the last several weeks, there's been some updated guidance on pensions, which has meant that we've had to do some more work on that area. That's involved us having to go back to the actuary to ask for an updated assessment on IFRIC 14. So IFRIC 14 is the standard that deals with pension asset ceilings, effectively. It's quite a complex area because it involves the actuarial side of things. So it's not an accounting issue, it's more the actuarial valuation side of things. And it's a national issue. Pretty much all of our clients have had to go back to their actuaries to ask for these assessments. We've done that at Exmoor. Ben has communicated with the actuary. We've had communication back, and the early signs are looking quite positive. So I don't think this is going to have any kind of impact on you, this issue. The work has been completed. I just need to sit there and review it later on. But the early signs are that I don't think this is going to have any kind of impact. So I won't go into any more detail on the IFRIC 14 stuff than that, because I don't think it's going to have any impact on your financial statements. The other issue that we've identified is, it's not really an issue, it's just some updated guidance. You'll remember in previous years, we would have completed the report, the audit findings report, and then we would have presented the VFM at a later date. So our intention was always to give you the VFM auditor's annual report at the November committee. However, we're no longer allowed to present the VFM separately to the main audit opinion. We have to do it all at the same time, so the VFM has to be completed before we can sign off the audit. So that means that we would have had to have gone to the November committee anyway with everything, with that information, because the VFM is currently being completed and is due to be completed in the month of October. One thing I just need to draw your attention to is that there is actually a deadline for the VFM work to be completed in line with the 2020 Code of Audit Practice, and that is the end of September. Where we are unable to meet that, we have to inform you via a letter, which you'll be able to find on the next page, on a few pages down in the report. This is just a formality, really. It's just us informing you that we're not going to be able to meet the end of September deadline for the VFM. but it was never our intention to meet that deadline anyway. That it was always going to go to the November committee. So that's just for you to read and to note. The rest of the report is just a bit of a sector update. So there's various articles there which will be useful to members to read and digest. Happy to take questions on anything, but I'll take it all as read otherwise. That's everything from me, and yeah, if there's any questions, happy to take them.
Thank you very much, Oscar. Members,
Yeah.
any questions? Mandy?
Thank you. There's always a frustration with your papers, actually, that so much of it's generic reading and will be countrywide and will probably appear in every report. And I think I've said again and again, and it's a repeated refrain, for the public that are looking and that don't know these reports, it'd be really helpful to sort of really clearly lay out the pertinent bits that are particularly pertinent for Exmoor National Park and not for everybody else in the country. I suppose the other frustration is you talked about two national issues, and more audit reports are being delayed because of something nationally as opposed to something that's occurring locally. And I just think moving forward, and this is a countrywide thing, we need to get smarter at this, because the amount of time and money that it's taking all organisations around the country from this, I think it's wasteful, and I really welcome sort of better ways forward. And PPE is a prime example. I know it's picked up with a number of auditors that they weren't perhaps doing it in enough depth, and then that comes down and it incurs a cost and time then on those that you are working for. And I'm sure you'd agree with that. You'd like it all to be sorted out in a much more timely manner, but I think it puts pressure on the whole system. And I think that's what we're seeing in the papers, and it's a real shame that it's not all signed off and finished with. And I'll leave my little rant there if I'm there.
Just coming back on that and to support what Oscar's saying, actually, from a sector update, at the 30th of September there was only one district and one unitary authority that had their accounts completed across the whole country. So it's not an anomaly in the situation we're in. It's a kind of a national fact, as Mandy quite rightly pointed out.
Well, I don't see any other hands raised. So, Oscar, thank you very much for that. So let's
Yeah,
go
no
back.
problem.
Sorry? Oh, he's switching me. I'm slightly deaf in one ear today because I've got some sort of bug I picked up on a train journey last week. No more could be said about the train journey. So we've been asked to receive the internal audit report for 23-24 and the audit plan for 24-25, and receive the external audit progress report and sector update as Appendix 2. Can I have a proposer? Thank you, Bill. And Stephen seconds. All those in favour? Thank you. Ken, if you wish to stay, you're more than welcome. Help yourself to a cup of coffee or anything like that.
It's a long drive back.
It is. I highly recommend you go for a walk before you try that then. So, item 7, Graham. And I just want to say at this point, apologies from our Chief Executive. She unfortunately had to go through with something else.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, good morning again, and thank you. Yeah, Sarah's not able to join us, but she's handed over to me to introduce this item. It's just me talking, no presentation, so I hope to get through fairly promptly on this one. So the purpose of the report was really to, as it says, to consider and clarify the nature and principles of a potential partnership arrangement with the Somerset Wildlife Trust, but not specifically the Somerset Wildlife Trust, but also to agree that if specific proposals for any land acquisitions do come forward, that we will come back to members and discuss in a little bit more detail the precise details around that acquisition. And we hope this will help perhaps a more expedite a more a quicker kind of outcome than so getting some of these issues agreed and resolved in advance will be helpful. Briefly, just wanted to remind members why we're here and what has happened. You may recall a few months ago an opportunity arose for a piece of land to be purchased by the Somerset Wildlife Trust, who have their own partnership arrangement with Aviva, who've provided a significant amount of money nationally, £38 million, for the purchase of land for the restoration and creation of temperate rainforest. The Somerset Wildlife Trust identified a piece of land on Exmoor that they wished to purchase for that specific reason. The Somerset Wildlife Trust asked if we wanted to go into partnership with them as a delivery partner, as they felt they didn't have the ability to do it themselves. Our response to that initially was positive, and we would like to do that, and we came to members to discuss it. And I think that there were a few concerns about how rapidly we were going ahead, and ultimately that deal fell through, which was just a land acquisition issue. But we came back to members with a forum to discuss some of these matters in a little bit more detail, and hopefully try and address some of those concerns that you had. And the outcome of that was we would come back to you today with some revised proposals, just to discuss what the content of a partnership arrangement might actually be. I just briefly in the paper as well wanted to summarise what temperate rainforest is. It's a habitat that is found globally, but in very restricted areas, often on seaboards, in temperate regions, and where we have ideal climate in the west coast of Britain for temperate rainforest, and there's some very fine examples from Scotland down to Cornwall, and many fine examples on Exmoor. And there's a lot of interest in restoring and recreating this temperate rainforest. It's very restricted, and I'm going through this because, in case there's any suggestion about, why are we being subject, or why are these opportunities arising here? It's because this is where it is. This is where temperate rainforest occurs, and this is where any opportunities for any restoration will happen. So if another opportunity crops up, it is here, and the Somerset Wildlife Trust would like very much to work with us. I go on in the paper just to discuss some of the partnership principles, and I won't go through them point by point. They're there on the paper, but these were some of the principles that were discussed and agreed at the members' forum a few weeks ago. And should members agree, this is what these are the kind of principles that we would enter into should another opportunity occur with Somerset Wildlife Trust to go forward with a partnership. I say Somerset Wildlife Trust, but there are other organisations who are potentially interested in land purchase. There's the Forestry Commission, the Woodland Trust, and others. Others may not be interested in the same way with a more formal partnership, but there are plenty of others who might be interested in land purchase. So in terms of what we're actually recommending and concluding, it's really to agree those principles of a partnership arrangement, and for you to agree that we would come back to members should a suitable piece of land become available in the future, and we'll discuss that in more detail at that point. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So I'm going to go to the members now. Have any questions? Stephen.
I just wanted to suggest a very slight amendment to the recommendations, and it is only a slight amendment, but Mr McVitie will know that one of the major concerns I think some members have, and some communities have, is blanket woodland imposition in places where, both in terms of the landscape and of the human population, it isn't necessarily fitting. Graham, I know, has been speaking to some communities across the moor, particularly Winsford, about this. I think what we're talking about here is something different. What we're talking here is about something that is quite specific in the nature of what we're trying to achieve. And I know that Graham is very alive to making sure that it actually does fit with the landscape. In the authority priority, which you will see is the first paragraph at the beginning of the report, line 3 and 4, work with partners to support delivery of national ambitions for appropriate woodland expansion. And I think the word appropriate is very important. Recommendation 1 is that the ENPA should seek to work in partnership with organisations considering land acquisition for woodland creation. And I think the word appropriate needs to be inserted there, in all truth, just to make it absolutely clear that we are actually talking here about something that is more specific, more granular. And I would like to suggest that we revise the recommendation so that it should read the ENPA should seek to work in partnership with organisations considering land acquisition for appropriate woodland creation. Otherwise, I'm perfectly happy with the report.
Oh, I'm happy.
And thank you, Mr. McVitie, for presenting it.
You happy with that then?
That seems appropriate. Could
I think that might be, because that's, you know, because inquiring minds, that's my first reaction is what's appropriate. So, Graham.
Yeah, there's a lot contained within that, but certainly as our emerging woodland opportunities and our woodland strategy, as that piece of work develops, I think it'll become much clearer what appropriate actually means and how we can work to maximise those benefits following the Lawton principles, being bigger, more joined, better, more joined up. And I think, to be completely fair, I think there probably are better places to do this, which display more topographical variations that contain water features, they connect existing areas of woodland. So I think appropriate is absolutely fine, and I think we'll be much clearer what appropriate means as our plans develop.
Thank you. I've got quite a list, so bear with me. Lee, you were next.
Thank you very much, Chair. It was just, forgive my naivety. Is it Graham, did you say?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, Graham. Thanks ever so much. Great report and, you know, broadly very supportive of this. On item 2, ENPA woodland targets, quite an ambitious target to increase 14% to 17% of the national park area, 2,000 hectares, that's 5,000 acres, broadly speaking. And I see on the hydrothermy map above it, I think that's what you call it, hydrothermy map, a lot of that purple area is focused around sort of Simmons Bath, Cornham and the Chains and all the rest of it. Are we saying then that 5,000 acres we're looking at, you know, our aspiration to sort of build into this is focused around the Simmons Bath area, or are we saying it could be anywhere on Exmoor?
Thank you. The latter, so that ambition, that target would cover the whole of the national park. So yes, it wouldn't be focused on this hyperoceanic zone.
Okay.
We haven't really identified a target for temperate rainforest restoration in that zone, but no, those ambitions for increasing tree and woodland cover by 2050 are across the entire national park area.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. I was going to say, if you're going to try and obtain 5,000 acres in that little box, you're going to struggle a bit.
Yeah,
so,
there's lots of conflict.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Fran, you were next.
Thank you. I think this is a great opportunity for Exmoor Park, and I'm very supportive of this. I just wondered at what point or how far down the line will officers go before it gets presented back to members for them to approve? Because I think the last time it was quite tight, the timescale was quite tight, and obviously you didn't move ahead with the Aviva opportunity. So I just wondered, you know, when would be the initial update, and then perhaps a decision for members. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, the purchasing of a piece of land by some, that in a sense that is entirely kind of their business. It's whether we go into partnership to help them to deliver that. And I think we would want to work as expeditiously and as swiftly as possible. And I think, as we've said it in the paper, that as soon as we've got firm details of what that land acquisition would be, and we've understood more clearly how serious Somerset Wildlife Trust are about purchasing, it may be that once a bid has been submitted and accepted by the vendor, that's the point at which we come back to members. So I think as soon as it wouldn't be a speculative proposal. I think we'd need to be clear that there was some real traction, some real firm proposal to go ahead. So good, thank you. But I think, yes, that's what we would be looking for, is that a bid has been accepted and is moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bill?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think Stephen said what I was going to say. I'd like an amendment, and I think an amendment's probably okay, but the nature recovery vision says more trees in the right place, and that where you were looking, I wasn't able to speak, but that was in the wrong place, I think. So yeah, more trees, but in the right place, and that's what it says in the nature recovery vision, and I think that's what we should be doing. It's as simple as that.
We're all signed up to right tree, right place, aren't we? In a minute. Robin's next.
All right. Just a couple of thoughts on that. This come out of that. We've got the national targets one way and another that we're landed with currently. Who knows? That may change. We're never certain. That's a political target, realistically. And there is quite a difference between that and the objectives of what we're looking at, to some extent, and how we attain them. And it's quite muddled in some ways as to the tree planting and what the real objectives are. And quite mixed messaging as well. And I think that quite a lot of this is going to be based around opportunity rather than the objective. Rather than looking for a spot, it will be the opportunities that come up. Because it's going to be it's near impossible, I would suggest, for us as a national park, to sit here and suggest that's the area we want to plant the trees in. Because we don't have that level of control over land management to be able to determine that. But when the opportunities arise, we need to be able to engage quite quickly. And I think this is the basis of this paper, if I'm right, isn't it? To give the opportunity to not be in the position we were last time, but to have that positive engagement, knowing that there's a direction of travel agreed. Is that right, Graham?
I think so.
That would be my kind of reading. What we've got to be aware of, that if we don't engage positively with this direction, and with the likes of Somerset Wildlife Trust, uncomfortable though it might feel to someone like myself some of the time, there is a lot of people out there competing for this market, so to speak. I've just pulled up one that's been just suddenly arrived. Well, new enough in this area that it hasn't got a web page yet for the area. They're starting to get active in South Devon, and they're looking to expand something called the Rewilding Collective. They're looking to actively buy land to rewild. Interestingly enough, one of the comments within their proposals is that they will target land that is not of high environmental value, but more specifically land that is used for beef and sheep production. That looks a bit like Exmoor to me, somehow. And that's a land management change, and they are, in South Devon, for one project, they've already raised 350,000, and they'll be looking at grant aiding to go with it. So that is the type of competition we're going to face, or is going to do this job for us, if we are not involved in targeting the direction. If the direction and the objectives and our targets have already been met, it makes it markedly more difficult in some ways for other people to muscle in. And I think we've got to ensure that we maintain the Exmoor National Park Authority's level of oversight and ability to focus the direction, rather than quite carelessly handing it to someone else. So that's my kind of thoughts. We need to be in there to influence direction of travel, where and when.
Thanks, Robin. Mike Kelly.
Yes, Chair. I think unless we disagree with the corporate objectives set out in the corporate plan, we should be accepting the principle here. It's very clearly. There's also other related policies that impact in terms not necessarily of land management, National Planning Policy Framework is very clear in terms of conserving and enhancing the natural environment, so it fits in with that national agenda. It's likely to change with the new NPPF, as we know, but in terms of the natural environment, I don't think we'll see many changes there. And we've also got policies within our own Exmoor local plan, of course, that look specifically at enhancing woodland areas. So unless we disagree with all those higher level and local objectives, I think the principle must be supported. And I certainly agree with Stephen's point about making it appropriate. We can then look at these on a case-by-case basis, and each of those are going to be different on their individual merits. So fully support it, subject to that change. Thank you.
Thank you. Laura?
Thank you, Andrea. So, right tree, right place made me laugh because we've just come back from a visit in Kilda Forest, which is lots and lots of timber trees just falling all over the place. But interestingly, I looked at the tourism potential of woodland and how that merges, so there's some potential there too. Just want to say, great report, really well thought out. It's great to see the links to the priorities. It's obviously really logical. And also the mention that the project's already underway or agreed in the lakes in Pembrokeshire, so we need to think about Exmoor's role in the national story as well, in the national picture, so fully supportive of being part of that. My question really was just around, so this is a public paper, it's on the website now, there's headlines galore about carbon capture, carbon banks, so I think it might be worth doing a bit of work around our reactive comms, looking at our motivation for exploring these woodland opportunities, that it's not, we don't want to create mass carbon banks. It's probably outside of this piece, it doesn't stop us supporting this piece, but I just wanted to flag that.
That's very useful, thank you. I think comms is going to be absolutely vital in this, and you could bring it down to what it really is Graham has come to a report saying, do you want to be an agent? So we're not going to own the land, we're just going to be the agent. And you know, if you bring it down to that, it gets it back to the delivery agent. It brings it back down to what it really is, which is really quite minor in many ways. So it won't be our land, and I think that's where we need to be very clear with the comms going out. We're not going around buying vast tracts of land. And Ken Salabet there obviously won't buy our risks, so the risk is very low because we are merely a delivery agent. It's like taking your car to the garage, really. Andy?
Thank you. 2 points, really. One on the process and one on some detail in the report. One was that we talked about the potential risks of these investment projects, and we said that perhaps lies with Ben. I've been involved in developing many business cases, and it strikes me probably quite often it's a useful thing to do is someone develops it and then someone reviews it internally. Is that the role Ben will have, or will Ben be part of the creative business case? Because I can almost see that advantage of someone, because we all get carried away with business cases and think the positives, and we come up with it, we see all the good things. And having that independent broker internally just looking at it was sort of one question I had, and I've seen that useful when someone does that role. That's clearly on the contractual and the financial, not the environmental side. And I agree with what the environmental side, the right woods, the right place. The second point, which is quite different, in the report, there are lots of targets now about reaching net zero 2050. But I think one's been quoted incorrectly in here. It says for Exmoor National Park, item 2.5, and it sounds like detail, but it's quite important. It's implying there that we've got to get 24% woodland to achieve net zero by 2050. That isn't right, is it? Because the park's target is 17%, and when you look at the report it refers to, which I went on a long training journey recently, so I won't go anymore, and I read this report, and that's when the UK is trying to allocate Exmoor to do more than just make Exmoor net zero. Where that paragraph says that for Exmoor to be net zero, we've got to have 24% woodland. And I wouldn't want people to think that for Exmoor to get net zero, we've got to have 24% coverage. Have I misinterpreted that?
Graham.
The final point first, I think that's probably quite crucial, if it's out in the general public.
Yeah, I'll answer that as best I can. Yes, we have a stated ambition to increase tree cover by 3%. That's in our nature recovery vision and the corporate plan. That is clear. This work by Small World Consulting, which is funded by DEFRA, is looking more broad. I think is looking more broadly. So after we've reduced our CO2 outputs and done other measures that the report goes into, we still have to sequester. What Small World Consulting are suggesting that Exmoor National Park ought to be increasing tree cover by 10%. So I think.
I agree. It says we could, but it
Yeah.
doesn't say we have to for Exmoor National Park to reach net zero. It's quite different, isn't it?
There appears to be some very good science behind it.
Oh yeah, I've read it, but it's saying for us to help the UK, Exmoor has to plant more trees. But it's not saying for Exmoor to meet net zero, we've got to plant 24% trees.
Understood.
There's a difference, isn't there? Yes.
So the data that we're looking at here has been cut to the national park, and that's what they're saying. But there's also a big data set covering the entire country, which says pretty much the same thing. So it's
I'll put it in an email because I think it's quite important.
Thank you.
Our target is net zero for Exmoor.
In fact, 10% is a mean as well. They're saying between 12 and 15%. So the upper end of that mean is an even greater increase in tree cover.
Because I think one's helping out the rest of the UK, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the other sort of everyone problem out. So, yeah. Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mandy.
Thanks very much. In essence, I support this. I think we need to be, we'll call it the cutting edge of what will be a fast developing area moving forward. So for me, you need to get the foundations right at the very beginning. So a few questions. I think for me, we're talking very much about trees, and we are not having a conversation around how that fits with flooding, for example, locally. And I've had lots of meetings with the Environment Agency, so I'd just like to have that sort of more holistic view on not only in planting, and there are other advantages, and that conversation sort of hasn't been had with the holding of the water with the tree roots. So it is risk and reward. Probably the sentence I'm slightly uncomfortable with. It says that SWT will assist the Exmoor National Park cash flow for upfront cost of planting. Costs will be spread over multiple years and reimbursed through grants once planting is completed. So there is a risk there financially for this council in that we will be paying it out in advance of a grant. Now, whilst that may be manageable with this project, if you end up with multiple projects, that could hit the finance and the flow of cash. And I think that needs to be thought about. I would rather we had the cash up front before we started planting trees personally, from a safety point of view. My other conversation is around other parks. When you look at that map, there are a number of national parks that will fall within those areas. And I still think there should be a conversation between national parks to make sure we're all sort of a similar approach, so you don't get that picking off of parks when different organisations are looking to work. I still think that's a piece of work that the parks need to be doing. And my last question, I raised it last time, is does there need to be a middle organisation? Because this is very much saying we will work with SWT. There might be lots of other players in the market. We want to make sure that we're not sort of pinning all our eggs in one basket by working with one organisation. If other opportunities arise, are we tying ourselves with SWT? So just a few questions.
So as far as I read it, it does say in recommendation 1, in working partners with organisations, and I think Glenn was quite clear that there are other players in the market. So I'm quite happy with that, as long as everybody else is. I'm very happy with the appropriate to be put in. I think that was an oversight. Graham, can you talk to us about financial risk to the organisation, please?
Yeah, I'll try. Thank you. Thank you, Ben. And just referring back to a previous question about some overview, yeah, we would always talk to Ben. I'm very happy to share any of our financial appraisals with Ben to give it an overview. So that goes without saying that would need sign off from the finance department. In terms of risk, I think the biggest potential risk here is this that we would be the grant applicant and the grant recipient. We would be procuring most of the works, so any of that capital expenditure would sit with us initially. We would also be responsible for developing and implementing the management plan, and I think there's a lot of it's critical that that management plan is implemented in such a way that our expenditure comes at the end of that kind of procurement process, at which point we would, in theory, be immediately eligible to claim any grant back. And if we carry that process through expeditiously and carefully, the risk to us can be a matter of just even a few days that our expenditure will be reimbursed through the grant application process very quickly. So we're not sitting on a huge debt for 12 months while we wait for income to come back in. We can structure this whole thing quite carefully, and the grants can be paid quite quickly. I think provided we follow that process very, very carefully, and that is our experience on other projects. I think where we potentially get into trouble is if we don't manage that process very well. If we're not aware of what is required of us from the grant aiding body, and it introduces delays and uncertainty into the process, that's when we start getting into trouble. But I think we've got enough experience to know when we can start that grant claiming process and get the finances in quite quickly. So there are ways of very carefully managing that risk to limit the liability on the authority.
Ben, are you comfortable with this?
In the form that Graham just explained, yes. Yeah, it's matching the scheme to the current resources we have, the timescales really, and making sure that we consider that risk element right at the start. Who the partners are, what the volume is, what the depth of the work is required is going to be. So I'm comfortable with that approach.
Mandy?
It's just having eyes wide open that we are relying on another organisation, and whilst we might have absolutely everything right up to where it needs to be, delays naturally can always occur. Perhaps they've got a delay on a meeting where it's agreed, or there's all kinds of reasons, so we need to be eyes wide open that whilst it might come through almost immediately, there might also be scenarios where it doesn't, and there's a bit of a delay, that we're all prepared and ready for that.
Jeremy, you were next.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and the last three speakers have brought together, and thank you, Graham, you've answered some of it as well, my concerns. My concerns stem from our previous discussion where the members were expressing some concerns about risk management, and we've been doing risk today, and this is the other side of risk, I think, and managing risk, our capacity to deliver, financial resources, people resources, all absolutely great, we want to do it, but we have to manage those risks, and we're dealing with weather and plants, and like any other land manager, trees don't always survive, so is there a result that is paid for that we have to deliver? We're dealing with that in SFI now, and all those things, so if it's not there when they come to see, you spent the money, you've got to do it again. So we've got to just remember all those things. Simply that, Chairman, just managing the risk. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. Lee, did you want to come back?
Yes,
I
just
thought
very
I saw it.
thank you ever so much indeed, Chair. It's just a very quick one, and mention the risks for Exmoor National Park in terms of the differential in terms of the timescale between the grant funding being received, etc. So we're obviously, I'm just thinking out loud here, so shut me down if you want to, but Exmoor National Park are taking some risks here that we're looking to mitigate. What risks are actually the other stakeholders? What risks are we asking them to take? So SWT, and if it was Aviva coming in, what risks would they be taking? And I understand us having to go for the grant because perhaps we're the land owners or whatever, but what risk would the other stakeholders be taking that would reassure Exmoor National Park that we're all in it together, not just standing on our own, where a trapdoor could be all of a sudden taken away from us, take us away from it all? Thank you.
Graham.
Thank you. I mean, the conversations that we've had with Somerset Wildlife Trust and with Aviva is that we have no firm answer on this, but they're very open to the idea of sharing risk and providing capital to support the process. So, you know, they've, having pressed them on this point, they're very open to that conversation, although we haven't had anything documented and nothing built in to the principles at this stage. So I can't answer that question completely, and I think it's a very reasonable one, but I think we've pressed the potential partner on this who are open to that kind of that suggestion.
I think if I can just add, Chair, with my bank manager's hat on, my day job hat on, I wouldn't be too comfortable being the only ones standing with a financial risk here. I want commitment from the other parties, SWT, Aviva, Uncle Tom Cobley and all, whoever it might be, that, you know, we're all in it together, and that Exmoor National Park aren't isolated when the whoopsie-doo hits the fan, if it could do.
So I'm going to come back in now. So if we look at recommendation 3, which is about the principles of the agreement with SWT, and the specific proposals are coming back to us, Graham, can you make sure they include that we are concerned about the sharing of risk, and we would expect to see that in any draft agreement, please?
Thank you, Chair.
Right, that's that one solved. Moving on.
Thank you, Chair.
No, I've done Jeremy, done Lee. Robin, sorry.
Yeah, on that, I mean, I'll support the recommendations and move them anyway, with subject to Stephen's amendment, which I think is appropriate. Just a couple comments around. I think from a point of view of our reputational risk is probably the bit that we need to manage as much as anything else. We've got professionals here that deal with the financial side, but our reputational risk, there's going to be some quite substantive challenges if there are large tree planting projects in place. And I think we've got to make sure that we manage that properly. And I think some of that just causes me a bit of concern. Recommendations absolutely fine. It's some of what I see in the paper that will probably cause some of those people outside of this room to have some quite serious concerns, principally among them that Small World consulting paragraph. Because there will be an awful lot of people will read that paragraph with an assumption that Exmoor National Park is signing up to 24%, to a quarter of the park being covered in trees. And I think that's a little bit of a dangerous expectation to have within that. So I'd just like to make it clear that that is a report, and it is a single report. It's not a definitive report by one small group that went through a series of national parks. We all know how fast carbon accounting has changed and is still changing. So it need not necessarily mean that what their report came out with, and it's now 2 years old, isn't it? That report, 2 or 3 years old, is absolutely accurate, and that will solve that problem. So I think just to be careful around that, around reputation. The other bit is around the risk of how we're looking at it, and principal part of the agreement I noticed was Aviva retaining that 90-year value of carbon credits, and it's just what happens should an event occur where, for example, the woodland ends up with, like we've had with Ash Dieback now, and there's a net carbon release, a massive forest fire. It's got to be something quite carefully put in there that both financially and reputationally, we're not put in that position that we become responsible for a net carbon release and how we deal with that. So just principally, around the recommendations, absolutely fine. But some of the detail that we've got within the paper, I think is a little bit difficult to front outside of this room. Just one other bit as well, Graham, and within your discussion, I know you explained it quite well at the workshop bit that we've done, but there's a variety of different ways of describing this as to whether it's woodland cover, tree cover, woodland canopy cover, tree canopy cover. There's a selection of different definitions in there, and I think we need to be quite clear what we're aiming for, really. And I know you did explain your interpretation, how you would expect that to be interpreted, but I think externally, this will be it's a public paper here. We need to be quite clear what we're doing. Thanks.
Unfortunately, we've got Caro, and she, you'll be liaising with her should there be any inquiries about this. Because at the moment, we're just agreeing to go another step. I mean, it's not like we're doing anything terribly exciting, really. I mean, it's exciting enough, but it's not actual happening, is it? It's all down to Aviva and SWT at the moment, and any other partners that might come out the woodwork. Okay, Andy, you are, I think, the last person with a hand up.
Oh, good.
I
shouldn't have said that.
Anybody else, then make yourself.
I don't want to go back over material, but it's very important, this risk element. And the cash flow paragraph was a new one which Sarah put in. And I responded to her an email saying I thought that was very good. And it has to be looked at when we come to business case, hence Ben's input and looking at the cash flow. It's really important, and also at the time we discussed it, we talked about phasing it. So you have a small upfront phase, and that really establishes the process for claiming the grants. Graham, I think you've been very ambitious a few days on subsidies, and I've written that down. The reason I said I put it in an email to Sarah is that my neighbour who went to the National Trust, and it was worth £250,000 project, he ended up waiting months for DEFRA. It was DEFRA, which is different. And he couldn't go and buy cattle. And the problem was, when you start planting trees, DEFRA remap all your fields. So you get put to the bottom of the pile. They do the easy ones first, pay them first. Then they say, you put trees in, we've got to map every cluster of tree, we've got to remap all your fields, and then they have to do that. Then they say, by the way, once you've done that, we now want to double check all your other stuff as well. So there were 3 phases he went through. He still hasn't bought cattle. The work was finished, so it actually is months. So therefore, I think as long as SWT have signed up to that, if we say to them it's only going to be a few days, then we're dropping ourselves in it. I think we say it will be the process, and the process will determine the timescales, and we don't know those timescales. So again, going back to, I think phasing makes a lot of sense. Plant a few trees, check out the process, check out how they're going to remap, find out the right process, and then you can phase up and scale up, which is what I thought I took from what Sarah was saying. So I think that phasing approach is important, and recognising a few days is very ambitious, but I understand it may not be DEFRA, but I'm sure they'll be involved as well. So, yeah.
Okay, now I just want to check. Does anybody else want to say anything? No. So, Bill, you may. Of course.
Can I just come back and just support what Robin said about paragraph 2.5, the small work consulting one? I don't think it should be in there really. I think it's a bit confusing and a bit contentious.
Well, he's in at the moment, so it's a public document.
Wrong. But yeah, so I just think that they say the need to reduce meat and dairy consumption is clear cut. Those sort of statements I think aren't really going. I mean, I don't think they're clear cut. I think they're opinion of a lot of people, but it's not a clear cut argument. And I'm just a bit concerned about Small World Consulting's figures being used as a background for what we're going to do. I think I'd rather rely on what we want to do, which is 3%, not have too much emphasis on that.
I think that Graham's heard loud and clear that comms to be about Exmoor National Park Authority and not some other group's opinion. Haven't you, Graham?
I have.
We're all very clear then, aren't we? So my opinion's okay, as we all know, but not anybody else's. So, you proposed... Now, Stephen, do you want a second because you put in the amendment? Oh. Oh, yes, of course. Yes.
I would like to propose the amendment.
Thank you. Have you got a seconder?
Sorry, but
Nobody yet.
It isn't an amendment, is it? Because we haven't got, all we've got is a recommendation, we haven't got a motion to amend.
No, that's not a motion, that's why I didn't think that. Nobody moved it along. That's an officer's recommendation.
Yeah, I think that's right. So if Robin would like to move the motion as I suggested with the addition of a word, I think that is what is the first thing that's on the table.
Yeah, that's where, is that right? Yeah, that's why.
And I will be very happy to second that. So, yes,
Right.
this is quite anti, Madam Chairman.
So it's been proposed and seconded with the addition of the word in the recommendation of appropriate. All those in favour? I think that's unanimous. Yes, unanimous. Thank you. We're all happy. Mandy, you look like you're about to say something there.
Sorry, I just think this point around the paragraph in the paper is really important, and I think the comments I would request that they are minuted and clearly laid down that there was concern around that bit of wording. I think it'd be good to have that in the public record.
Well, I know the other bit I would just say is to make sure that we've asked to coming back about the risk with
The 2.5.
So it's 2.5.
Oh, the 2.5.
Yeah, I just think that could be difficult. So I just
It'll be in the minutes.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, moving on to the next item, and thank you, members. Welcome, Thea. Sorry, I acknowledged you came in. Authority meeting schedule. Ben, is there anything really we want to say about this? It is what it is, isn't it?
Pretty much, Chairman. It's we're 6 months through the trial of the kind of reduced meetings per year. This is a suggestion for the scheduled meetings for 2025. Most fixed in place, with a couple of ones that are variable, such as the final accounts committee. But quite happy to take any questions on it or suggestions.
Stephen.
Well, to be honest, Madam Chairman, because we are going to be reviewing the revised governance arrangements in February, and that is stated in the report at 1.9, I don't think there's very much point in us spending a huge amount of time on it today, other than to accept the recommendation, but look forward to a lively discussion in February.
Excellent. I'll take that as a proposer. Who's the second? Thank you, John. All those in favour? Thank you. So, moving on to the next item, which is the levers and starters. I'm not sure it's the right way round. Should it be starters and levers? I don't know. We just say goodbye to Richard and welcome Tracy and Louisa. I hope they'll be very happy. Members' reports. Anybody got anything they want to report? I mean, there were 3 of us in the room that went to the National Park Conference last week. Did you want to say something, Laura?
Yes.
And then, Andy, I'll come to you, so you're ready.
Yes, Andrea and Sarah and I went to the National Park UK conference in Northumberland. Well, it was in Newcastle, but it was run by Northumberland. And the headline was, well, the headline focus really was on, they did it in a particular order, deliberately, one of the panellists, which I thought was really useful, inclusion and equality and belonging, because when you facilitate inclusion, it can lead to equality and those feelings of belonging. So it was just looking at the brilliant work that's been done in other national parks around removing barriers for people to enjoy the national park, but also there was quite a strong strain on governance and boards, and how actually there was quite a big appetite. I know there was a bit of an appetite here for that as well, for a look at completely restructuring how things are done. That's beyond our power, so we're looking at, we were talking a lot about how we can progress things without a full-scale governance change. So some national parks are South Downs, and up in Scotland it's done completely differently, the way boards are selected, but they co-opt members and have boards, so quite a different route to get more diverse people in, younger people, people of colour, etc. Yeah, it was that was predominantly the focus. Would you agree? We went on some interesting trips. So I went out to Kilda Observatory, and they were looking at the impact of dark skies to the local economy, and I think it was £25 million they reckon annually dark skies tourism brings to their economy. They're part similar to us, very dark skies, but they've got a lot more infrastructure. So as well as the sort of Kilda Observatory, local businesses, hotels have created their own observatories and are working to tap into some of that potential. So that's very interesting. I know Dan's aware of all of this as well. I'll feed that back to Visit Exmoor too. But also how the scope of the different ways they use that forest landscape to engage with different people. And one thing they've also done is been charging camper vans to stay overnight in the car parks there, and they've actually found litter has gone down, which I found quite interesting, because people take pride in those spaces, they don't want to lose those spaces. So yeah, I'm not going to go into everything that happened there, but it was really useful, really great to find out what's going on in other national parks and how we could perhaps take some of that forward. So I'll be feeding some back to Dan as well and Claire. But yeah, that's probably a headline from me.
Thanks, Laura. Andrew?
Yes, it was a very interesting conference. I saw it was two sides almost. I think it was great talking to the other chief execs, other chairs, and hearing what they've been doing, and the network I could step up from that network, so I'm very, it's great. And hearing great things that they've been doing, Dartmoor, in terms of engaging with people. You might know this, Robin, they created a pop-up farm in London. They went up, they took sheep out, took cattle, and I thought that was a brilliant example. Unfortunately, I have to contrast it with some of the speakers who were talking about engagement. It was just unrealistic. I mean, I deal with local governments a lot. I hear EDI discussions a lot. But they weren't engaging in the audience. It was like an almost unreal world. It's unfortunate. But yes, the promising thing is that when I spoke to all the chairs and the chief execs, they recognise that what needs to be done. And I think for EDI and these areas which push the boundaries for some people, first thing you've got to engage with people, and then you've got the message. And I just think I was called middle class privileged a number of times, responsible for slavery. So there's that unhelpful side, but there was a lot of helpful stuff going on. And I think going forward, focus on the helpful stuff would be really useful, and how we engage the NHS and how we become relevant to the Labour Party, because the government would be really important. But I went on a trip as well, and a really positive thing, we went to, saw the Sycamore Gap where the tree was cut down, and they've got a very good education centre there, which made me realise what Exmoor's got. We've got Pinkery Pond. A lot of national parks don't have anything like that, because they don't own buildings. And that showed the power of nature recovery, because the tree is growing from the roots up, and not from the trunk, and they turn that into a real positive message in terms of good things that come out of bad things. And I thought that's a real good message about nature recovery. If we just give nature a bit of space and get on with it, I just keep the sheep away, because the sheep being right over eating the roots, and they wouldn't have grown. So that was great. I went and saw a peat bog, a real deep peat bog, and we pushed rods down, and we went down 6 metres. Makes you realise how deep peat bogs can get compared to Exmoor. And they're doing a lot of work there with the peat bogs. Also a story where the army caught a peat bog on fire, where it obviously dried out, and that caused a lot of carbon release. So that you can see the difference between the dry peat and the wet peat. And then the third one is about access, and these are things I want to refer back to the Exmoor Forum. When we have the Exmoor Forum in December, I want to share with the people of Exmoor on that forum about that. And the access to the national parks, I think, the way me think is, as a landowner, as a member, what can I do to encourage people to access the moors more? And I think perhaps we can. When I see people walking across my footpath, on a good day I'm saying, brilliant, great. On a bad day it may not be quite as welcoming. So it's just those small little things we can perhaps at the Exmoor Forum talk with people about what we can do to encourage people onto the moors. Because they were just saying, some inner city people, and they're saying black people don't feel welcome on the moors. I think we're being judged quite hardly on that, but it did make me question, think, what can we do to make it a welcoming space? I think it is, but we could perhaps do more to make it a welcoming space, and I think that's a discussion I'd like to have at the Exmoor Forum. So, yeah, mix that. And I had quite a good train journey, sorry Andrew, but I won't say any more on that one.
And one more thing on the sycamore, we're getting a sycamore sapling.
We'll all get that.
We're getting a sycamore sapling to plant here as well from the Sycamore Gap. Yeah.
I went to the Sycamore Gap and Hadrian's Wall, so yes, we will be getting a sycamore sapling, which is nice. And know quite a lot about the ecology of Hadrian's Wall and the geology of the area, which is quite interesting. I had no idea. So all the stuff we were taught at school, as a certain generation, because it was a big thing, wasn't it, when we were kids, being taught about. I've never seen it, but they missed out why it was built. We never got told that. We all thought it was to keep the nasty Scots out, but actually it was to keep everybody else in. And there we are, it just shows you. I was like the biggest thing that happened to me for those 3 days. All those generations of kids thought that, and we thought the wrong thing. Eventually it was to keep the nasty Scots out, but it was built to keep the slaves, us, in. Yeah, the indigenous people. They didn't want to lose their slaves. That was very interesting. What was also interesting, because I stayed by the stump, it was absolutely pouring with rain by the time we got there. So the more hardy older gentleman went off marching up this hill, and I thought, well, no, I'm going to sit on this wall. And his family came along, and I said to them, would you like me to take your photograph? Because they were all doing the, trying to hold the camera. Anyway, they came from Bhutan, of all places. I mean, I'm not joking, there was me and these 3 people, and rain was coming down. And so I said, oh, have you enjoyed your visit? And all the rest. Clearly, if I was local, I don't know why, wrong accent. But and they said yes. I said, the only thing is we don't want to walk up any more hills to get back to the car. And this is the most amazing thing. I said, there's a bus. I said, and I can get you to the bus, and I can tell you there's a bus in 15 minutes. There's enough time for you to get there, to get back to your car. They thought I was amazing. What did I take from that? A, always read the bus timetable when you've got nothing else to do, because somebody might ask you from Bhutan when the next bus is. But there was something about, we need more rangers, because actually it was just that human chat. Can I take your photograph? Can I help you with that? Where's the bus?
Did the bus actually turn up?
Yes, the buses were amazing. I've got to say, when we were, you see, the thing is, we'd had our lunch together, hadn't we, in that Sill place, which is their visitor centre. And I got quite intrigued by how many buses were coming along. So I went to look at the bus timetable, which I know is very geeky, but I thought, this is incredible how many buses are here. If there's something happens and they're all in some traffic jam. But no, there was an amazing bus service. So I could tell these people a couple of hours later where to catch the bus. Well, I was quite impressed with my own skill. The train journey was the worst aspect for me. Both up and back, it was horrific. And the gentleman from cross country knew all about it yesterday at another meeting I was at. It was so bad. And frankly, why anybody would pay 177 quid return to do that was quite beyond me. It was awful. Mandy.
Thank you. I did watch the film link that was sent through, thank you, about the young people trying to access the parks. I don't know how many watched it, but several gave up and went home. So I think there is an issue about access on any form of public transport, and I think that showed very clearly that it is very difficult.
Can I just come back on that, because one of them was the trip from Cardiff, right? And I said this to Andrew on the way back, that made no sense to me whatsoever, because except for when I had to take his stuff there and take his stuff back, and I live on the park, my son was using public transport. So yeah, there's delays, but then equally, I took him back once, and there had been an accident the other side of the bridge, and we were just sat there for hours, just sat there in the car. So, but I actually think that film was used erroneously, because Theo has no problem. Yeah, it takes a long time, and the trains are crowded and all the rest of it, but you can do it. And he would catch the bus to Blackmore Gate, and I'd pick him up from Blackmore Gate, as John knows, because we live locally, don't we? Simply because I'm a horrible mother.
I think there is a point there, though. Not everybody finds it easy, and if we're looking at access, then the more we can do to help and assist, the better.
I absolutely agree, and I'm happy to tell you that we're Devon County Council relaunching the 210 and 309, which goes from Barnstable Railway Station, which we do pay for to meet every train until the evening, don't do the evenings, and that takes people all the way to Lynmouth. So, I think you need to know that the local authorities are doing their bit. I don't think it's always easy to use public transport, and I think that the journey that we had, all of us had, going to and coming back from Northumberland demonstrates how awful it can be. It was really very expensive, and it was absolutely appalling. There was nothing good about it at all. I mean, Sarah and I had to break our journey at York, and don't worry, the guy from cross country heard all about this yesterday as well, simply because we couldn't get to the toilet. There was too many people crowded on there. We'd had absolutely nothing to drink for 5.5 hours, and we were both desperate for the loo. I mean, we couldn't climb over all these people to get to the loo. It was just impossible to do. It was just dreadful. I think that was really bad. But we broke our journey, got off, When we used the York station, and this is the other thing that annoys me, when we got on the next train to get to Newcastle, of course we had to pay for that because we were going on a cross-country ticket. It's like we only got off because we needed the lift. It was very expensive.
Insult to injury.
It made Lincoln Town Council's 50p look like an absolute bargain compared to the 18 quid to pay.
Very more, isn't it?
Andy, did you want to let me Andy speak then? Did you have another point?
Yeah, just really a follow-on. And it struck me at the conference, the National Park England and the campaign. They were talking about many things which are beyond the remit of the National Park.
Yeah.
And you know, we can do so much in the National Park, but we're short of money, and we can't be the ones making sure the trains are running okay.
Yeah.
I know we can lobby, but actually, right now we need to be lobbying for money for the National Park to do the right thing for the National Park. And I think that was really forgotten during the whole conference, unfortunately, by the people presenting, that they wanted cultural change and wanted, you know, change of ownership of land, and it's beyond what we can do. And I think that's always, we're always realistic here, aren't we? And we've got to keep it realistic, what we can do and change here. We then got to become relevant to lobby governments or councils. So I think it's always that drawing that distinction. That was really missed during the conference. That's all.
Stephen, you used to be terribly important in the National Park, isn't it? You still are here, of course. Sometimes it came out really bad. Stephen was in charge tonight.
How many insults do you want to throw? I was going to have the heretical reflection that in 2002, when the National Parks Conference was held in Northumberland, we flew. It took an hour and it was so comfortable.
Okay, you've now gone into the same category as some of our colleagues that might be nearby who also flew and made this very grand exit of you're off to catch our flight now.
It was still something that was sort of vaguely permissible in those days.
Well, we polished our halos while we were having this dreadful. Thank you. Oh, Fran.
Thank you. I can relate to some of your comments because I did my national park training in Northumberland, and it was a beautiful area, and they've got a lovely and I'd not been to Hadrian's Wall, and you know that was amazing. I was just going to say that with regard to diversity, etc., there was a Taunton Together event on Saturday, and they were there because the Contox National Landscape have done some work with an African group that are based in and around Somerset, and they had some kind of project, and they were accessing the Quantock Hills and thought it was amazing. So I think there might be those kind of opportunities that we could do on Exmoor National Park, linking with different groups of people, bringing them onto the park to do different walks and things like that. So I think maybe we have to be a little bit proactive, joining links with some of these groups of different people who wouldn't normally come
We
here.
have done quite a lot, and I was heavily involved with Mosaic in the past, which you'll be very familiar with, and we do a lot and various things. So I think it's also incumbent on us when we see the opportunities, as those, especially those of us who happen to be locally elected members, because we do get invited to various things, and it's quite easy to do little things that help. I'll come to you in a moment. But yeah, we definitely do. And I know the last Mosaic group that we had when they visited, I actually went to stay with them in their accommodation. We had a great time. I think they taught me more about how not very brave I am about doing things than I would have learned anywhere else. So I think there is opportunity for us to learn as well from other groups that come. Jeremy.
Slight change of subject, and it links a couple of things. You will have noticed in the agenda the levers there are from the Exmoor Moorland Bird Survey. Brendan Commons Council had a meeting the other day, and we were lucky enough to have a presentation by the Exmoor Moorland Bird Surveyors of how they've done the bird survey and to get the preliminary announcements. And I hope that we here will have a presentation soon from them, as soon as possible. And it's very, very good news, except if you're a yellowhammer or a curlew. But it appears, just from the summary, they told us that Exmoor is, and increasingly so, a worldwide hotspot for certain birds. And it's really, really good news. Numbers have gone up, and so I think we need to hear that, and we need to get it into the public domain as quickly as possible.
There's obviously no problem, we can put that on one of our agendas. Carol's nodding away, so she's taking note.
And can we thank the bird surveyors who have worked incredibly hard and got a really good result.
Absolutely no problem with that, we can put that on the last item. Thank you. But I'm going to close the meeting now, because